Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on tackling sleep troubles. I'm tired, you're tired, let's all get some sleep. Our presenters today are Mickey Ostrowski, Ami Santos, and Jenna Reglerts-Ward, and I'm going to let them have an opportunity to further introduce themselves as we get through the presentation. But we will have three different presenters, and they're going to be trading off. Also, as I've shared earlier, my name is Maria Maddox, and I am a consultant with the EI training program and have been around quite a while, so most of you know who I am. And some housekeeping information, just to let you know that when this webinar is done, we will be sending out an email that has a link to the SurveyMonkey for our webinar survey. And it will come to you pretty quickly after we get done. You'll have a few days to get that completed, and then once you're completed, your certificates will be emailed to you within 5 business days after you've completed the survey. Make sure you're checking your junk mail or anything like that in case if you haven't received it, look there first. Otherwise, there will be information on how to contact us if you're not receiving it. Right. If you have not participated in our webinars, I will share with you some information that are particular to this model that we use. So many of you have found how to chat. That's awesome. You'll see under your name, you have your name, who all is in the logged in the main room, and then the chat. And you can actually dislodge that bar if you click on it, and you can make it bigger, smaller, however you want to do so. Also, some other functions that we have here. If you look under your name, you'll see there are 4 different icons. One is an emoticon box. Another, let me see if I can pull up my pointer here. Another is it's a timer, you don't need that one. There's a hand. We may ask you to raise your hand from time to time, so if you do so, it would be that one there. And then the last one is our polling function box. We will be asking you throughout the session today to take polls. So when you are asked to do so, click that box here and open it up, make your choice, and then we will post the results when everyone's had a chance to respond. If you have any questions at all during the session, please use your chat box. There are breaks built in within the training today where we will stop and address your questions. So if we don't address them right away, just hold on. We will get to them. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. If you ask a question that is similar to another one that's been asked, we'll probably just ask it once. I do ask that if you have questions pertaining to specific children, that we'll do our best, but we probably won't be able to address those that are on very specific issues. But you can ask them, and we'll see what we can do with that. Also, I know many of you are probably kind of wondering about the state of our state, and I'm just going to put it out here right now. We really do not have any new information. Anything that we have right now is posted on our website and on our Facebook page. So I strongly encourage you to just stay on top of those 2 sites. Also, Provider Connections website to gather more information about any changes in budget, trainings, credentialing, anything like that. They will get posted on those sites immediately. So we will not be answering any additional questions about that during our webinar today so that we can focus on what our presenters have to share with us. So I appreciate that consideration. Other than that, I think we will get started. We're going to start with our first poll. And our first poll is to find out who we have with us today. So if you will open up your chat, your polling function, that 4th icon, and indicate who all we have here. Use that function. Looks like folks are responding. That's awesome. All right. make sure you're using the polling function to let us know what type of service provider or family member you are, or staff, CFC staff, administrators. Okay. Great. Give folks another 5-10 seconds to respond. Okay. All right. Looks like things have slowed up, and let's see here. Looks like we have the majority of our participants today are interventionists, and I'm trying to see if I can make this box a little bigger, but there we go, a little bit. So you'll see that most of our participants are interventionists within the system, and we have some administrators as well and some CFC staff. So welcome aboard. And again, please, if you would, use your chat box to let us know what different types of interventionists we do have on the webinar today. Looks like we've got Maria as a speech pathologist and Mary Ellen as an OT. Got a couple DTs in here as well, so just keep letting us know. And I think we are ready to turn it over to Ami and Nikki and Jenna, and I'll let you explain this slide.
All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Ami Santos, and I'll be introducing myself in a little bit, but one of the things we wanted to make sure that you do is, while we know this webinar is going to be recorded, and part of the reason why we're redoing this webinar is because the last time we did it, it wasn't recorded properly, and so we're trying it again, and so lucky for all of us to have this opportunity to get together again in this nice rainy day, at least here in Champaign. That's what we're having. One of the things we want you to do is to keep something handy for you to remember some of the things that we talk about here today. I always say, you know, it's like using the technology you have, so have your smartphone, whatever it is. If there's something on here that you see during the webinar that you want to take a picture of, or remind yourself, or text somebody, or send a Twitter out, or send a Facebook message out to people, to yourself, as a way to remind you, as a way to share the information, feel free to do that, because this is a really good way for us to kind of maximize our, the technology that we have on hand. So, yeah, so that's what that is. So, okay, okay, so who we are. So I'm going to start first. And my name is Ami Santos, and I am on the bottom of this slide picture. That's me with my daughter, Lynn, who is actually now 9.5 years old, and much, much bigger than that picture is. I'm a professor here in the Department of Special Education at the University of Illinois, and also work with Maria and our crew with the Early Intervention Training Program for the last 3 years. So, Jenna?
So hi, I'm Jenna. I am on the right-hand side of your screen with that little boy there. That's my youngest, Grayson. So I'm the mom of 4 children, ranging in age from 4 to 18. I'm actually registering my daughter for college tomorrow, so hopefully I'll be sleeping well. We'll see. I'm a doctoral student at the University of Illinois. I'm finishing up, starting my last year in the doctoral program here in early childhood special education. I've worked in this field in child care and early intervention and early literacy, and my research really focuses on supporting professionals who support families and young children.
Okay, and hi everybody, I'm Nikki Ostrowski, and my son is the one left up in the top left-hand corner in the NICU when he was born. He was a sickly little guy, and he spent 11 days in the NICU, and now is 15 years old and towering at about 6'4", so has certainly caught up to where he started. And Maria, when you introduced the title of the webinar today and you said, I'm tired, it's such a dreary day in Champaign, we all looked at each other like, yeah, we're tired too. Oh yeah, that's the title. So, as the mom of this 15-year-old who does travel baseball, I feel like my life is sleeping in hotels on the weekends where we're off schedule, eating lots of different food, hearing noises in hotels, and constantly feeling like we're not getting enough sleep from the way our life is with him at times. So with that, we hope that you'll get some ideas for sharing with families, and also if you're a parent of a young child yourself, you'll kind of think about and reflect on your own strategies that you use with your child. So session objectives, kind of what do we hope that you'll get out of this? We think that, you know, trying to get any infant or toddler to take a nap or go to bed can be exhausting for everyone involved. And we hope today that you'll learn some strategies to help you take a nap, to help you make nap time and bedtime calmer, because a lot of times little ones just don't go down as easily as we'd like them to. So our hope today is that we'll focus on prevention and consistency, that those are going to be overarching themes through this. Okay, so think about last night. So think about yourself when you went to bed last night in your own sleep. Did you wake up often? Did you watch TV beforehand? Did you read a book? Did you eat a snack? Did you have a lot of dreams or maybe a nightmare? Did you wake up with an alarm or a child climbing into bed with you or hollering for you? Or did you wake up naturally without any outside prompts, any alarm clock? Did you wake up wondering when you could go back to bed tonight? When could you put your pajamas on again? When could you take a nap? So those are things we want you to kind of think about yourself too, and what your own sleep is like, and we'll talk about the importance of sleep for us and for children. So how much sleep did you get last night? So use the polling function again that Maria showed you up in your left-hand corner, and highlight A to E of how much sleep you got last night.
Looks like folks are responding in. We'll give folks a few more seconds to log in their responses. All right. Okay, looks like got things going there. All right, let's see what our responses are. So,
oh my goodness.
7 to 8. Okay.
Oh, okay, 7 to 8. Right. Okay. Less than 4. I'm sorry for you people who got less than 4. And I envy the ones who got 11 to 12. No, nobody got 11 to 12. Some put none. Oh, they haven't responded. Okay, yeah. So 7 to 8. So when we talk about adults, including the elderly, how much sleep do we need? That much of the research says that we need approximately 7 to 8 hours of sleep per day. And why is it a problem sometimes when we have young children, and especially if we're trying to take a nap and they're laying in bed with us? We thought this was kind of a cute slide of all the positions that babies tend to be in. For me, my son was like the neck scarf, the one on the top row to the far right, so I would call him the body pillow, because he constantly would lay on top of me like a pillow. But I'm sure you can relate if you have ever tried to take a nap or lay down with a toddler or preschooler and they're climbing all over you and snuggling close.
Yeah, we had the H.
Your family?
I had the head, and then my husband had the feet, the kicking feet on that one.
And we have the jazz hands. He has the
Everybody? Okay, so what are the benefits of sleep? Why is it important? 1, happier children. Children are less irritable, they're more social, less demanding, more adaptable. They have better peer relationships when they get a good night's sleep. Consequently, families are happier. Predictable routines, less stress. When we have more sleep, we have more energy, and that more energy then can translate into parenting tasks that can be difficult if we don't have a lot of energy. So happier children makes for happier parents. Also, having a good night's sleep fosters development and learning. There's research to show that higher IQs, better attention, and better classroom performance, particularly for older children, when they've had a good night's sleep. And finally, prevention. That prevents a good night's sleep prevents learning and behavior problems. It also, there's research to show that a good night's sleep helps with obesity. So there's actually a relationship between sleep and obesity. There's also some current research on sleep and development that shows that moms who sleep better have infants who sleep better, and that developmental achievements impact sleep. So how as children are growing more, like they're developing more in motor or language, that will impact their sleep. And that sleep patterns and temperament are related. Think about yourself. Those of you who only got 4 hours of sleep last night, I can speak for myself. If that was me over multiple days, I would be pretty grumpy. I really need a good night's sleep, and I cannot sustain multiple days. I start to feel sick to my stomach. So certainly your temperament is impacted, and the same with infants and toddlers. And also that there's research to show that infants create new knowledge while sleeping. We were talking about a recent study that came out that showed that while infants sleep, they are actually reprocessing things that they've learned. There was an article about children learning the names of objects after they had a short nap, and that sleep was indispensable, the researchers felt, for memory gain. So as children slept, they were remembering things. So what happens when infants, toddlers, young children don't get enough sleep? What do you think? Any ideas? Post them in the chat room.
Cranky and irritable. They get sick.
Sick, absolutely. Yeah. Sick, cranky.
Clingy and crabby. Yep.
Demanding, right? All kinds of challenging behavior if babies don't get enough sleep. So how much sleep do you think that newborns need? So use the polling function up in the top of your screen and decide between A to D, how many hours do you think newborns need?
Okay, folks, yep, use that polling function. Looks like folks are finding it. We're getting some good responses. We'll give folks about 10 more seconds to finish up their responses. All right.
I have to do 2 more.
Okay, looks like
you got it right.
Yeah. All right, the majority of you answered what's correct. What the average newborn needs is 16 hours of sleep a day. And that what we need to remember, though, is that while infants need 16 to 18 hours per day, they may only sleep in like 1 to 2 hour increments. So they may sleep a little, then wake up for a couple minutes or a little bit of time, then sleep some more. And as babies get older, they need less sleep. However, we always have to remember individual babies have different sleep needs. And it's normal for a 6-month-old to wake up during the night, but then go back to sleep after a few minutes. So they may wake up for a couple minutes and then put themselves back to sleep. But remembering 16 to 18 hours a day is kind of the average for newborns. And then finally, these are some sleep guidelines that were published in the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, that give you the ages and then the recommended amount of sleep from newborns through adults, including the elderly. And 2 key things to remember or note is that sleep changes as we age, and there's no magic number, as individual sleep needs vary. So, you know, what I might need might be different than what Jenna might need, might be different than what Ami might need, and it might vary depending on how busy my life has been for the past couple days. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ami, and she's going to share some information on recommended practices and how that impacts sleep and challenging behavior.
Okay, thanks, Mickey. So our professional organization, and I know that there's OTs and PTs and speech path folks too, and I know that within your professional organization, you also have somewhat similar recommended practices that that relate to working with families in EI specifically. And so we just wanted to make sure that, you know, in anything that we do with young children and their families, that we really are promoting their participation, the family's participation in making any kind of decisions with their around, you know, routines and things that you would do with their child, interventions. That all of these really lead to the development of a plan that would really support that family as a whole, and something that the family really wants for their child and for their family. The EI principles that you all are hopefully aware of by, you know, at this point, because it's something that I know that EITP has really been pushing out there, really reminds us about the things that reminds us about what we need to do in terms of really promoting providing supports and resources to assist family members to enhance their learning. So a lot of the things that we do really comes through to the family, to the child. And so that's what we're hoping that, when what we share today are just some tips that are really geared towards supporting the family. So your role is basically to really think about the strategies that we're going to share with you today that support families to effectively help their children establish that consistent and effective sleep routine. So those are really important things for us to just kind of remember as we go through this. So here's some strategies. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we consider and adapt and adopt some of these strategies as we see fit with the families, and as the families see fit for themselves. So it's most important to remember to work with the family and get to know the family as you already have many of them that you've been working with for a while now. And so some of these suggestions may or may not work as is with them, but you may have to adopt or adapt them as needed. So the first one has to do with making sure that helping the parents think about how to keep their baby calm and quiet when they feed or change them, especially during the night. So some of the things to think about, especially around this, is to keep things calm at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. So if you think about some of the things that you might do, you probably won't engage young children in play when you know that they're going to get ready to go to bed. And so when you think about, I'm at the phase right now with my daughter who wants to have sleepovers with friends. And if I want them to be in bed by a certain, say 10 o'clock, and I know that they're just like laughing up a storm and playing and whatnot at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, it's not going to happen for them to sleep at 10. So I need to really be thinking about what are some calming things to do with them at that point. So same thing with young babies, same thing with us adults as well. We also don't want to, we have to remind parents not to stimulate or wake the child too much during the evening. Keeping lights lower in the evenings is also helpful, and as much as possible, really avoiding any extraneous sounds that may come out of televisions, computers, or even mobile devices, which is kind of interesting because I realize that this is more and more a problem, especially when you use your mobile phone as your alarm next to your bed, and it makes all these silly sounds when it does different things. The next tip has to do with making daytime playtime. It's really making sure that you provide opportunities for children and making sure that the parents provide opportunities for children to be exposed to sunlight during the day. It's kind of hard on a rainy day, clearly, but really finding those times when they see, that they really get that exposure. Talking and playing with the baby during the day will help lengthen their awake times, especially if you need them to be sleeping solid hours in the evenings. And so that's really important for them to have. So the third tip has to do with putting your baby to bed when drowsy but still awake. So this will help the baby learn to fall asleep on their own in their own bed. Holding or rocking them until they're completely asleep may make it hard for the child to go to sleep if they wake up during the night because they're used to it. But if they're kind of like getting to that point where you could tell that they're drowsy and sleepy, that's probably a good time to put them to bed. But again, this is I do want to remind you that this is something that you may have to adapt and adopt for different families depending on their preferences. The tip number 4 has to do with waiting a few minutes before responding if the child wakes or fusses. And I know it's really hard for some parents. I'm one of those parents. I have to admit that, my heart just breaks every time I hear a child cry, and it's really one of the hardest things. But one of the things that's been suggested in research is really to see if a child can fall back asleep on their own when they fuss. And sometimes, that 30 seconds seems like hours for some parents, and sometimes you just have to really look at your own clock to see, okay, has it been really hours or has it just been 30 seconds? If the child continues to cry, you might want to check on the child, but don't turn on the light or play with her or pick her up. What you want to do is keep things calm, dark, and the best of all is boring. You don't want the child to say, ooh, there's something more important for me to do when I'm, now that if I'm awake. So you want to keep it very boring. If the child gets frantic or really is unable to settle themselves, then you might want to think about what is causing this, causing this fuzziness, or what's bothering this child. They may be hungry, wet-soiled, feverish, or otherwise not feeling well. And so those are the times you might want to really check on the child. So here's a myth or a fact, and just go back to your poll. So you need to wake a sleeping baby overnight.
So use your chat function and choose either yes or no. Right, and we'll give folks a few 10 seconds to finish using that chat function, that fourth icon on the under your name. We got some what ifs listed in the chat, so I'm sure Vicki and Ani and Jenna will address that.
Yep.
All right, let's see what we got here. Okay. Looks like an overwhelming, I can't get it to make bigger. Trying to make it bigger.
Did it switch out? Did it? Yeah, so yeah. No.
So I think the X is the no.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so all right. So I'm going to let Jenna take over from here, and then because then she'll talk a lot about this some more.
Yeah. So the recommendations from research and like the American Pediatric Association is that you do not need to wake a sleeping baby overnight. Now there are some times where you perhaps could wake a baby. If so, we're saying you don't really need to wake them if they're growing and gaining weight steadily. They feed well, 8 to 12 times a day for a breastfeeding baby, or 5 to 8 times a day for a bottle-fed baby during the day. They're, urinating and having bowel movements normally. So as long as they're growing and seem, typically healthy, there's just no need to wake them up. So, So there are some benefits to night waking, though. Coercing a baby to sleep through the night by methods such as crying it out or increasing the daily caloric intake may not be a healthy strategy. So, and babies drift in and out of sleep throughout their time, and they're able to more communicate their needs, such as feeding. Some researchers believe that babies sleep as they do because they were designed to wake frequently through the night. And when their natural sleep rhythms are thrown off, it may actually cause more serious problems. So the research really shows, kind of let the baby lead the way on their sleep patterns. There's no reason to really interfere with that. And we're going to talk about some other kind of more specific situations and strategies in a minute for particularly children with disabilities. So, all right. Okay, so a couple more tips before we get into some other things here. So, one tip is really there's been shown benefits of massage for babies, and infant massage is a really great strategy just for families to use. But a note to that is that you should be trained in infant massage, and if you are a certified therapist in infant massage, feel free to share that information with your families or share resources on infant massage as a research for them. And there's lots of classes now and books and videos on infant massage for parents available out there. Infant massage is not a specific EI service that is provided and paid for through Part C services, but it is a beneficial strategy that you can use and suggest for parents. And finally, we all know that a soothing bath before bed can be very beneficial for babies. It helps relax their muscles, and who doesn't love a nice bath before bed? I would love to have time for that every day. But it also gives the opportunity to, one, connect with your baby and have some quiet time with their baby in the bath, as well as do things such as aromatherapy, adding, scents to the bath, and just really having a nice, nurturing time with the baby. So now we're going to talk again about family-centered practice, and we're going to get into more strategies that you can do to help support the family using some of those tips that we use. How can we share this with families? So one, you really want to identify the family strengths and priorities. So is the sleep pattern an issue for them or not? Most families at some point in the first 3 years of life will have, problems with their children's sleep. So ask them, is this an issue for you? Is it something that we need to work on? And then look at their routine. What is their current routine? What do they like about their routine, and what do they struggle with their routine? So use the family as letting them lead into the process and really encourage them to try different strategies. And then when they are having challenges, really empathize with them and give them some of the information we're giving you today, and know that these are common struggles and we can work together to work through them. And we're going to talk again here about some strategies here, but we'll really encourage them to set limits on their child's bedroom routines and really start working on consistency of routine. There's lots of studies that have come out recently, in 2015, that have kind of shown us that something we've already known, but in research where more consistency through bedtime will help obviously lengthen sleep, it'll reduce stress for the family, and actually have developmental gains and better outcomes for the children because they're getting restful sleep, and the family in general will be more functional. So here's another trivia question. When do babies begin to sleep through the night?
All right, so use your polling function, that fourth icon under your name, to let us know your choice between A, B, C, or D. Okay. Looks like we're getting some good responses coming through. Give folks a few more seconds. If you use your polling function, we can then use that to collect the data for the results. All right, looks like just about everybody is done, and our responses that we received were this.
That's true. So yeah, anywhere. See, I always say when children begin to sleep through the night, I say never, because my children never sleep through the night. But yeah, children vary greatly. And I was talking to my girlfriend who has a 12-week-old baby, and he's sleeping through the night. My niece slept through the night. It just varies from child to child and family to family. And so you really need to be open to that. You need to be able to tell parents, too, that one child they had might start sleeping through the night, and then their next child might sleep through the night at a different point in time. So it really varies between children, child to child. So, and remember that sleep patterns might change throughout the baby's life. So things like when they're teething, when they're walking, when they start talking, there might be disruptions. If there's things going on in the house, maybe they're moving, maybe there's a new schedule. I mean, sleep patterns just change over time. And so even if we have a nice secure sleep pattern at one point, it may change for a little bit, and then we can just help the family to get back to that consistent routine. So it's really important to be responsive to the family's routines and the family's needs at that time. So now let's get into some other great strategies you can pass on to your families. So for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, really, and we're going to say this a bunch of times today, consistency, 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 and really set up a routine. And we want to set up a routine that works for the family again, so you're going to have to find what works for them. This is often the hardest part of time for families, particularly if they have multiple children, and so we really want to help parents do that. Children, particularly toddlers, kind of resist going to sleep as they start developing that independence and autonomy. They're trying to figure out where they kind of have some control, where we're going to be, and so often even infants that were sleeping well once they hit toddlerhood might start resisting sleep. And particularly if they have older siblings who are staying awake and they see, well, Joey gets to stay up and watch TV, why do I have to go to bed? They're trying to figure things out. It's important to help parents get those toddlers to develop those sleep habits. So one, we want to set up a nice quiet routine before bed. Again, Ami was saying too, we want to start kind of at 2 hours before bedtime, which sounds like a lot. And at that point, though, we just want quiet time before bed. So, we don't want to start wrestling or going out for a family run before bed, anything that's going to get them very active in that 2 hour span. But then when we get closer to bed, maybe 30 minutes before we bed, we want a simple, consistent routine. So things that are very common are taking a bath, reading stories, going to the bathroom, brushing teeth. And you can use this time really to connect with your child as well. I actually love bedtime because as I have 4 children, it gives me that one-on-one time with whoever is the child that I'm putting to sleep that time. It's really nice. And it's really important to be consistent. So make bedtime the same every night. But within that consistency, be able to do things like provide choices to the child. So perhaps the child can pick the toothpaste. So at our house, we have 2 kinds of toothpaste. So that's an opportunity where the child gets a little bit of that control and autonomy. He can pick between strawberry and mint that day. He has to brush his teeth. That's part of the routine. It's not negotiable. But he has choices of toothpaste. He also gets to pick his books. So you want to pick 2 books. I get to pick 1 book. So decide where the choices can come and what are some reasonable choices that we can put in for this family. And you want to keep things consistent, but you also want to make sure there's some flexibility so that you can generalize this sleep routine that we develop across people, for example, between moms and dads and grandparents and other caregivers. We also want it to transfer to places. There's always going to be a time where your child's going to have to sleep outside their bed. So perhaps you can get a routine that's simple that you can transfer to a hotel or grandma's house or when you go on vacation. And also times, because there are times when, you know, someone has a band concert, so you're out a little bit later, or you want to do something fun as a family, or the schedule just runs a little bit late. So we can start our bedtime routine maybe at 7:30 or maybe sometimes at 8:30, but it's going to be consistent whatever time we start it, and it's going to be short and simple and consistent whatever we do. So this slide too has some visual support on there as well, which you can do. You can develop checklists and things like that.
Let me add one thing, Jenna, too, about this recent study we just read from the American Academy of Sleep Medicine reported that children who had a consistent bedtime routine every night slept an average of more than 1 hour longer per night than children who never had a consistent bedtime routine. So think about that, how much, you know, how beneficial that is for young children, that they get in the routine, they have a consistent bedtime, they sleep better, sleep longer than children who don't know from night to night. Am I brushing my teeth? What time am I going to bed? Am I reading a book? Am I not? So I think that's important, too, as you share that kind of information about consistency with families.
And also in that same study, they showed that children with a consistent routine had earlier bedtimes. They had shorter latency between putting the child down and the child actually falling asleep, and reduced night wakings. And those are kind of the key pieces that families struggle with. Like, you know, I put the child down at 7 and 9 o'clock, he's still awake, or I put him down and then he wakes up 3 times. So getting, you know, and so we're talking about doing this routine to help multiple sleep problems. So another thing to do is, and this is something, you know, seems pretty obvious, but allowing the child to take a favorite thing to bed each night. And also, I mean, obviously with parents, you want to promote kind of this lovey object to be something that's safe. So it shouldn't have there shouldn't be any choking hazards, or, you know, if it's a stuffed animal, make sure the seams are well put together so pellets or stuffing won't fall out. But something that's lovey that the child can have secure, and this will help transfer that routine from place to place or person to person. I highly would suggest from personal knowledge that they have maybe 2, because something will get lost, something will get dirty and need to be washed, something will get broken. So if they have, you know, they don't need to have 16 stuffed animals in the bed, but 1 or 2, or a little blanket, because I don't know if anyone else, and you could say in the chat box, I mean, we've had moments where you are scrambling around the house trying to find the pacifier or the lovey or the blanket.
Well, I think Knuckle Bunny. You know, the whole story of Knuckle Bunny is, you know, she's lost her lovey, so trying to find it all over town. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, but just to remember, though, that this is not obviously for babies.
Mm-hmm.
And these are, because you want to make sure that as we know from when babies sleep, they have to be free of any kind of hazards like that could be a problem for them as they you know, at nighttime or when they're sleeping.
But make sure your child's comfortable as well. And we're going to talk about clothing when we talk about kind of sensory needs in a little while. But make sure the child is comfortable in what they're wearing and also the temperature of the room. So, and here are some things to consider as well. It's recommended that children do not sleep in the same bed as parents. So if the family does choose to co-sleep, you can give them recommendations on that. But in general, the American Academy of Pediatricians does not recommend co-sleeping in the same bed. There is some emerging research on sleeping in the same room with especially infants when they're learning to regulate their sleep cycles, and particularly with feeding needs. But if it's, so assuming that we're not co-sleeping and the child's in the other room with you, in a separate room from the parent, again, it's, Ami talked about too, really trying to encourage the parents to not go in the room every time they make a noise or call out. Instead, trying things like waiting a few seconds, listening to what the need actually is. Maybe they just are rolling over. Maybe they're talking in their sleep. I've had a couple of sleep talkers in my house. And give them the chance and the opportunity to fall asleep on their own. So they're building that skill of being able to self-comfort and self-soothe. And if you need to go in there, then reassure the child that you're there. But you may not necessarily need to go in the room. You could talk from the hallway and say, you know, Mom's here, you're going to be okay, go back to sleep. And then if you need to, you can increasingly get closer, or if you're close, you can increasingly get farther away from the child. And remind them, you know, that you're there for them. Now, there are some, you want to balance between just a restless sleep and with actual distress. So, for example, if the child is visibly and audibly distressed, then that's a time where you can go to the child and find out what's wrong. Maybe they are very hungry, or they've soiled their diaper and they really need to be changed, or if child has some sensory needs that you need to deal with. Children with autism, for example, may need more help reading those social and emotional cues, so you may need more direct than you know, standing by the door and asking the child to calm down on their own. So again, reading the child in the situation is really important, and working with the parent on these things. And also give it time. Nothing is going to be fixed overnight, no pun intended. I mean, definitely you're talking about super consistent routine, at least, you know, 10 to 14, 21 days. So this is something, if this is a real big problem for the family, that it might be something where it's like, you know, let's really work on this, really, you know, let's clear our schedule, our evening schedules for 2 weeks and really work on this. And it's going to be a slow progression. And so we'll talk a little about that later, about how to really affirm the parents' confidence and competence about the change.
All right, so we have an opportunity to address any questions that folks may have. Ladies, I haven't seen any questions come through at all. So if you have your question now would be a really good time to type it into your chat box. Let's see. Jessica would like to know if sleep disturbances at age 2 are normal.
Yes. I mean, it depends on the disturbance. And I would also, that's something too, and we're going to talk about journaling in a little while too. You want to look at the big picture. So look at what else is going on for that 2-year-old. Is the 2-year-old having like a big, you know, verbal explosion? Are they gaining some increased motor skills? Is there something going on, a change in the schedule and routine? Are they starting a new child care? Are they starting preschool? Is there something going on with the family routine as well? So it's hard to say, you know, specifically with maybe the child you're thinking of, but it's very typical up until the child, you know, really is 5 to see some disturbances in their sleep.
All right. It looks like Margaret would like to know if there's any books that one might recommend to parents related to sleep.
Yeah, so towards the end of this webinar, we do have a whole lot of resources that we, and we provided the links. The majority of them, if not all of them, are free. There's some really good things specifically for parents around sleep that we'll get to at the end, and I'll kind of highlight some of them for you. But yes, they're not books, but they're really more like magazine article kinds of things that you might see like in a parent magazine, but all evidence-based materials that are really informative and written for families.
And when we send out the link for the survey, there will be a copy of the PowerPoint on a PDF that will have all of those references listed there. So you'll be able to, you won't have to like hurry and try to write them down as the slide comes up. They will be on that link. Also, don't forget the EI Clearinghouse. They always have a lot of great resources for EI providers and parents as well. Samantha would like to know how you would address night waking for a breastfeeding infant, 9-month-old baby, especially if they tend to be eating out of habit.
Yeah. Well, I would say a 9-month-old baby who's breastfeeding will probably still wake up in the middle of the night to feed. That's very, very typical. Breastfeeding babies take longer to sleep through the night than formula eating babies. Breast milk is metabolized much faster, and so it doesn't stay in their system as long. They need to eat more often. And so it's very typical for 9-month-old babies still. And I would say, too, it's really hard for babies to really kind of distinguish if they're eating out of comfort or they're eating out of kind of need for the nutrition. And so what I would do is, again, I would ask like the mom to journal a little bit and see what else is going on. And then we could talk about things like, things about trying to not feed the baby. And so I know that's sometimes hard for moms, so this is a good opportunity for dad to get up in the middle of the night. Perhaps, I don't know, my husband never did that, but I hear that there's fathers that do that. And so if dad can get up, that might be a good test to see if the baby is waking up to actually eat or if they're waking up for some comfort and they want the comfort from the breast. So that would be something to try, or trying instead of giving the breast, if they want to try a pacifier or a different kind of, lovey or something like that, they could try that. And then just getting with the routine. But, I hate to tell some moms that really babies will sleep through the night once they're weaned. Some breastfed babies sleep the night before that, and so that's kind of up to the parent when they want to do that. And there's lots, there's some articles about different techniques to do night weaning.
Yeah, so then Ashley asks about a 4-year-old child with sensory processing disorder that refuses to go to the bathroom nightly and ends up having a temper tantrum every night before bedtime, and how might you deal with it? For that kind of strategy, and I'll let Jenna and Ami add if they have others, I would talk to the families about what's a preferred activity that child likes. So say that child really likes to read a book. I would start pairing, let's go to the bathroom and then we can read your favorite book. Or that child likes to take a bath, let's go to the bathroom and then we can take a bath. So that, first you do this and then you do this. So we often use that phrase, first this, then this, to help children. A child with sensory processing too, if he needs a visual support schedule that might show, here's the routine. We brush our teeth, we go potty, then we get to read a book or whatever the routine might be. So that would be a first step that I would suggest. I don't know, Ami or Jenna, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think we're going to get to some other strategies.
Okay. And then a couple people offered suggestions for books, so that's great. Thank you.
The Healthy Sleep book,
yeah.
Sleep Habits, yeah.
Toddler who's experiencing severe separation anxiety who won't fall asleep unless mom is laying with them.
Yeah, I like that a little bit.
You're going to talk about that one too?
Yeah, Stacey, I think we'll get to some strategies for that in a few minutes, and if we don't, we'll make sure we address it in a minute.
All right.
Before you move on, just to kind of let folks know that there'll be another break for questions toward the end of the presentation, but feel free to type them as they come to your mind. You don't have to wait till the actual break to type your questions. Okay, thanks.
And you all have our email address, or you'll have it at the end too. So if things come up later, you want us to help you try to find some other resource, or you're not sure about something, feel free to email any one of the three of us. Okay, so when to seek more help. So, if a family is having issues with a child who's doing a lot of nighttime awakening and not sleeping through the night, when is it you want to ask the family to check with a pediatrician? And that would be if the child's not gaining and growing. They're not gaining weight and growing steadily. You would want to suggest to the family that they need to check with a pediatrician if the baby's waking up a lot. Jenna talked about these earlier about when should you wake a sleeping baby. So that would be a case where if that baby is not gaining weight, the pediatrician might suggest to the family to wake that sleeping baby up to, in fact, provide more nutrition for the baby. And as Jenna just noted, that breastfed babies do feed more often. So you can see here the numbers. So if you're trying to help comfort a family or reassure a family that this isn't unusual, if you see that breastfed babies are feeding 8 to 12 times a day versus bottle-fed babies might be 5 to 8 times. Well, that could be potentially 4 more times a day, which could account for why they're waking up more often at nighttime. I used to always tell myself with my son, who is not a good sleeper, okay, he's probably not going to be doing this when he's 10 years old or 12 years old. Luckily at 15 he is not when he's coming into the room. And another issue of when you might suggest to a family that they talk to their pediatrician is if the child is not urinating normally. So they should have at least 4 wet diapers a day minimally. Also, if a baby is not having at least 3 bowel movements a day. So most breastfed babies will have even more frequent bowel movements than 3 a day, and they tend to be soft and seedy. But if that's an issue, then you want to suggest to a family they talk to their pediatrician. And then finally, a child who's experiencing recurring things like ear infections, tonsil infections, or snoring, those are conditions or issues where, a baby is tugging at his ears, that you would suggest to the family, of course, that they see their pediatrician. We would suggest that you not ever offer ideas for over-the-counter medicines without a physician for an infant or toddler, but really encourage the family to talk to their pediatrician and get suggestions from them as opposed to you. So when do we, as we work with across child care and as developmental therapists, and when do we help parents and child care providers, pay attention to the warning signs that children give us that they're ready for a nap? So what are behavioral indicators that a child's tired? They might be things like the child yawning or the child having difficulty focusing. And knowing the individual child is important here because, what's the usual amount of attention this child pays? And that would be dependent on the child's age and also should the child have a disability or not. Also, an infant toddler who turns their face away from objects or people, they're kind of shutting down. So they might be telling you that they're ready for a nap, they're tired. Of course, a child who's rubbing his or her eyes, pulling at his ears might be signaling, I'm ready for a nap. Finally, the child who's got kind of those wobbly legs or the wet noodle, they're falling down, they're having difficulty pulling up to stand, clearly is a suggestion that I'm tired, I've had enough here. The child might become more passive or lose interest in play. Or a sleeping baby might arch his or her back and lean backwards when you hold him or her, kind of signaling, I'm ready to have a break here and some downtime. So those are just suggestions that as you're helping parents cue into and read their babies, their infants and toddlers, those might be things you point out to them and help them pay attention to. Okay, now Jenna's going to give us some ideas about really collaborating with family members and other caregivers and how we might work together with them and share information about reading a child's cues.
Yeah, so it's really important to know for, families, especially first-time parents, is that sleep may not come as simple as you think it might come. So really, we're going to talk about kind of helping them and building relationships with your families so they can help build relationships with their children and read their cues. So these strategies are based on the Triadic Strategies by Jeanette McCollum and Tweety Yates. And we're going to talk about them in relation to sleep. But also, if you go to the SEPA website, which is one of the resources at the end, you can learn more about using Triadic Strategies and look at some examples of them here. So we hope that you're familiar with them already, but if not, we invite you to learn more. So the first one is just establishing the dyadic context, which is really just that parent-child context, and really telling, telling the parents that this is an important relationship to have with your child. There's research, again, I'm talking about research because all of this research has just come out that, like, hot off the presses, that children that have more secure attachments or more secure relationships with their caregivers sleep better and have more positive developmental outcomes. So really just telling parents that this is an important piece in having this relationship with your child all the time is going to help sleep. So making the connection between things that are happening throughout the day as well as what's happening at night. So, and you can, telling parents, pointing out things that they might not see is what a lot of these strategies look at. So saying things like, he really enjoys cuddling with you. So looking and saying, look, there's this relationship here. and reminding them that nap time can be a great time to slow down and enjoy each other. And really taking the stress out of the bedtime, but really focusing on this is the time to build relationships. So so then we're going to focus on focusing attention to the relationship and the situation. So really commenting on things that are happening. So things that are happening, both kind of things that are working and also things that are challenging for the family. So saying to the family when you're interacting with them and you see something, he seems to really like when you read together, or she looks kind of uncomfortable, or pointing out things, some of those signs that Mickey talked about, signs of fatigue and needing sleep. So the next strategy is something that I hope you're already doing, but really providing that developmental information for families. So telling them what is perfectly normal. It is perfectly normal for children's sleep to vary across their lifetime. It's perfectly normal for them not to be sleeping through the night after 6 weeks. Telling them that those things are normal, that they are normal, but here are some strategies to help your family function a little bit better and making a more positive relationship. And then also if there's some issues that you find, you could say by this age he should be able to soothe him back to sleep in a couple minutes. So maybe we can encourage them at that nighttime instead of going out right into in the bed to help them, knowing that developmentally this child should have these skills to soothe themselves. And then strategy 4, I think, is a really powerful strategy, because if you're looking at early intervention kind of philosophy and those key principles, we really want to empower parents, and so by affirming their competence and pointing out the things that are going really well for them, particularly in a challenging time, will really help them build their confidence and be able to do more strategies. So really pointing out, the effort that they're putting in, particularly when outcomes might not be going so well. So for example, if they're still really struggling with some bedtime things, saying, you've been working really hard to keep this consistent. Or that was a really great idea that you tried. Even if the idea wasn't that effective, it was really great that they tried an idea, and that was great. Let's try something else. So strategy 5 and 6 are more direct strategies that you're probably more familiar with and use more often. And that's just straight up provide suggestions. Let's try this, let's try this, let's do this. I wonder what would happen if we used a white noise machine tonight. So being more direct, but also considering, again, the family's preferences and needs and activities and routines. And then finally, modeling strategies for them. Maybe they need help looking at how to swaddle the baby, how to hold them. And this is a point where if this family is really struggling with sleep, scheduling your sessions around sleep time, so around nap time or in the evening, to help model those strategies in real time for them so they can embed them into their routines. So here are some common concerns from families and some suggestions to address them. So one, consistent routines. And this is something that is hard for lots of families, but again, looking at them, kind of assessing the family and their needs. Do they have a consistent routine or not? If they don't, let's work on being consistent. And we can do things like using visual schedules. We can use some other things to get that routine there. The next thing is using social stories. So getting back to Stacy asked a question about separation anxiety. So one, separation anxiety is a normal developmental skill that the children develop. And there are times where you will see issues with sleep because now the child is worried that the mom's never going to come back because they haven't developed that object permanence. There's other things like fear, for example. Children a little bit older, around between 3 and 4, develop kind of fear of monsters under the bed or in the closet, for example. Maybe they're afraid of the dark, or maybe they've had nightmares or past experiences that make them worried. So using social stories is really good because, one, you can personalize it to the family and their routine. You also can go on the internet and find already made social stories and then customize them to the family. And you can put in pictures of the family's house and bed and parents and routines. So those are really great. Also assess the sensory environment, which we're going to do in a moment. I'll talk about in a minute. And so sleep journals are also very helpful. And this is something I would encourage the families to do. And just write down lots of things that they've tried, what they haven't tried, and also things that are happening. So maybe the problem is actually something that's not related to sleep, but it's related to the rest of their schedule. So maybe, Sarah never sleeps really well on days when Dad works late. But we never realized that before because we never kind of wrote it all down and looked at the big picture. So that's really nice. So, you know, I would give a family a little composition notebook and let them write things down. And then finally, this is a big thing, when parents are dealing with sleep, and if they have a toddler in general, they are tired. So if the child is resting, parents need to rest. The dishes can wait, the laundry can wait, your house can be a mess, emails can go unanswered, turn the phone off, it's okay. You know, the rest of life can wait while you rest and rejuvenate, because if you can't really take care of your child unless you're taking care of yourself. So next, we're going to deal with sensory issues, and so this came up before. There was actually, again, a recent study that looked at children who were hyper and hypo sensitive actually had more disturbances in their sleep. So looking at things to really work on children's sensory integration and development will help them sleep overall. So consider things like lighting. You know, we are animals and we do respond to natural circadian rhythms, so keeping it light during the day and dark at night are really important. And so things like, we always think, well, if they're scared, we'll turn on a night light. The problem is if the child wakes up in the middle of the night and there's a light on, their body biologically will start saying, oh, it's light, I should be awake. So using night lights that turn off by themselves, there's lots of them that have timers now that turn off after about 15 or 20 minutes or that are very soft. Using blackout curtains during the day, during nap times, or during the summer when it doesn't get dark until 9 o'clock are really helpful. Making sure that the bedding and clothing is comfortable for the child. Removing labels if they need to. A lot of children have sensory labels, and particularly in pajamas, they have really long labels because they have all the warnings on them. I snip them off, and I actually just use a Sharpie and write the size of the clothes on them, so if I pass them on, they're there. And the right texture for the child. Some kids like very light cotton things. Some kids like flannel, warm jammies. Some kids like things on their feet. Some don't.
And there's a lot more clothing now that I've noticed in the last few years that are tagless. And so I think sometimes finding those things are, you know, could just be, you know, some of these are just very practical solutions that we probably don't think about with children. But I think, so just really thinking through some of these issues with the parents would be helpful. Yeah,
and thinking about things like, are they too hot or are they too cold? I have one kid who will not sleep with a blanket ever. He's just a hot kid. So he really needs light PJs and no blankets. And also things like do they need something on their feet or not? So particularly kids who have this sensory integration issues sometimes need something on their feet so they feel secure. So things like compression socks or footed pajamas, or putting infants kind of towards the bottom of the bed so they can push their feet against the end of the bed. My son was in the NICU for a little while, and he needed that kind of compression on his feet. You also can look at weighted blankets. I would encourage you, though, to consult with an OT and a pediatrician before using weighted blankets. And finally, for infants, swaddling. I will say some infants love being swaddled and some don't. But the children who do, particularly if they're hyper or hyposensitive, swaddling will help them integrate their sensory needs as well, and it'll make them feel secure. Babies who feel like they need to be held all the time benefit from swaddling because they feel like they're being held. And I would also make a suggestion if you're going to swaddle a baby who's, again, having maybe separation issues, swaddling or a blanket that mom or dad sleeps on the blanket for a couple days, gets their scent on it, and then lets the baby sleep with it. I use that at home. It works really well. So 2 more things, and I'll finish up sensory here, but smells. Some children are sensitive, so avoiding cooking and cleaning near bedtime if this is an issue, and looking at aromatherapy. And so lavender and chamomile are very relaxing and soothing, so including these in bath time, or you can use like hypoallergenic sprays. Now, obviously, you want to look at allergies and other considerations when using things like that. And I would never recommend using candles or incense in a baby's room. And then finally, noise. And this is something, too. Some children need it completely quiet, and some children need a little bit of noise. And so you can look at white noise machines, soft music, and also something my son's been looking at is he always wants to see more books or he wants someone to be with him. we've been using audiobooks so that there's no light on in the room, but he can hear someone kind of talking, and a nice quiet story, not a super active story, but a nice quiet story has worked really well. And audiobooks are available for free, you know, online and through most public libraries. You can get them for free. And then also for older children that don't like noise, you could use things for older children, you know, over 2.5. You can use earplugs putting them in a quieter space in your house.
Yeah, I was going to say, so one of my favorite audiobooks when my daughter was a baby was what is it? The Moon to the I Love You to the Moon and Back.
Mm-hmm.
What is that book?
Not Good Night Moon, no.
No. It's that bunny. And the audio recording of that, I can't remember. I can see the title. Somebody tell me. Can you please repeat where to get the audiobook?
Oh, you can get audiobooks at the library and download them.
You actually, most public libraries now online, if you go to their site online, you can find them, so you can just play them from your computer or your smartphone or tablet and just turn the light off. You also can check them out from most libraries as well, and some of them still even have cassettes if you have a cassette player, or CDs. And then obviously off of iTunes, you can get free, lots of free audiobooks. Audiobooks have become very popular, and they're very easy to find online.
And last time we did this webinar, Jenna, I wrote in my notes, someone suggested www.dreamingwithjeff.com as a website. So www.dreamingwithjeff.
Yeah, so Jeff Bridges has an app out. There's also some apps some sleep apps that actually my husband uses because he has sleep issues, and they just kind of talk you down.
Uh-huh.
It's really nice, and it's a nice calming way to go to sleep.
Another thing I wrote in my notes, Jenna, from last time when we did this was you had mentioned when you talked about scent, aromatherapy, you had mentioned chamomile tea and that you could use tea bags in the water, which I had never thought about before. And I thought, I wrote it down because it was a novel idea.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, too. It's not expensive. Families don't have to go out and buy some fancy bottle of something, make a little cup of tea and put it in as they're getting the bath ready.
Right.
Great. All right. Thank you, Jenna. So just a few things to remember when
Guess how much I love you.
Yes, guess how much I love you. Yes, that's one. I could still hear the song too.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, that's a great. It's a great audio package if you ever get a chance to get it. So things to remember: infants should sleep on their backs, on firm surfaces, on clean surfaces, in the absence of smoke, under light. Blanketing, comfortable if they have any, and if you need it, and their heads should never be covered. So I remember when my daughter was also a hot baby and she continues to be one even now. But I remember when it was, I know it was going to be cold, and I really don't want her to go to bed with where it's going to be covered because she should be like sweating. So I usually use that sack, the sleep sack, with her, and that was perfect because it let air flow through, but yet it covered her feet, and so she was comfortable that way. The other thing to remember, especially with infants, is that the baby should not have any stuffed animals or pillows around the infant, and never should an infant be placed to sleep on top of a pillow. Sheepskin or other fluffy materials, especially beanbag mattresses, should never be used. Water beds can also be dangerous, and mattresses should tightly intersect the bed frame. Infants should never sleep on couches or sofas with or without adults, wherein they can slip down face first into the crevasse or get wedged against the back of the couch. So these are just a few reminders about, that you can share with parents, obviously, and families about their infants. So one of the things to remember is that sleep patterns do change, and that one of the things for us to remember is that is the child having a growth spurt? Are they learning to crawl or walk? Are they developing some separation anxiety, which is typical for some, as children get older, and then eventually they kind of learn to deal with some of these? Are they developing some fears that, and so these are all normal developmental stages that could change their sleep patterns. But if they don't get through these stages, that's when you probably might want to consult them a pediatrician or somebody who could help them kind of figure out. And this is where we all could be, including the family especially, be detectives of what's going on. Why is this child continuing to have separation anxiety? 2 years old, maybe still okay. We know that, like 9 months, 10 months old, that's babies when they don't want to go to a stranger, be cared by a stranger. That's normal, and that's actually a positive thing. So some of these separation anxieties are positive things, but for as they get older, it may not be as positive. But again, give it time, be consistent, and be patient with the child at the beginning, especially when they're just going through this. So here we go. Oh.
I was going to say something before we get to the resources, because we have a little time, right? Mm-hmm. I want to check out this other study that I was reading and said, obviously, it was about how mothers who sleep better have infants that sleep better. And it's kind of cyclical. Obviously, if you have babies that are sleeping better, you have mothers that are sleeping better too. But what's most interesting about this study was that they actually looked at fathers as well, and they found that fathers, even at early on, so it's by 3 months old, fathers that helped more in daily caregiving, so helping mom out during the day, by 6 months had infants who slept better. So it kind of looks at that whole family as a whole and their whole routine, and there's that big picture that we've been talking about a little bit. So we have dad who's helping out and caregiving during the day, so maybe giving mom a little bit more respite so she has more energy to deal with some more nighttime routines or maybe the night waking. So that whole family unit working better is going to help the infant sleep better, and then everybody sleeps better. And the family, again, is kind of functioning a little better because everyone's resting. So that was really interesting too. We almost always focus our research on mothers and babies, but this was really looking at how fathers can really help. So when you're looking at families, really looking at who are the other caregivers in this family and seeing, what we can do to look at the cohesive picture.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. So here are some, the next 3 slides are actually a list of resources that you can use. And again, they're all free and downloadable from these sites. And Maria noted that there's going to be a PDF that's attached to the survey link once you go to it that you can download, and then you'll have all these links at your fingertips. So this first slide are links that take you to 0 to 3, which is a national organization that focuses on birth to 3, young children birth to 3, so typical, and to some extent they do offer some resources for kids with disabilities. But they have a whole host of information related to sleep, and that's very, very useful. The next set of slides here is from the technical assistance. It's a taxi center, and then also from Head Start and from CDC. So the first 2 links that's provided in here, how to help your child have a successful bedtime and making life easier, bedtime and naptime, are really good materials that you can download. They're about 2-3 pages that you can download, print off your computer or print off in your office computer and share with the families, because these are like easy to read, kind of like written like a magazine kind of thing, beautiful pictures on them, but something that a useful resource for families. Again, it's around that. And then Head Start also produced, and this is through their eClick, what we call the eClick site, and so it provides information and tip sheets. Specifically, I want to point out there's that culture of sleep and childcare, because there's some strategies that we've shared with you that may not necessarily work with families who come from a different belief system or cultural background that may look at sleeping very differently than we probably do generally. And so I think really thinking that through in this particular handout provides some insight into some issues related to sleep and families' cultures. Okay, so then the last set of resources are from a variety of places that we found resources from, and one of them is the Illinois Early Learning Project, which is based here, which is a project by ISB, and it's based here at the University of Illinois. but it has great resources as well beyond just the sleep thing, but it has some information that you can definitely download that for young children. And then there's a whole host of other ones from the Sleep Foundation, and then there's one that says Sleep Better, a guide to helping improve sleep for children with special needs. So there's that one.
I think the issue about those is even though they say preschool in the title, there may be some useful information. There is some useful information for infants and toddlers in them too. So consider perusing those also.
Well, and if you're serving a family that have multiple children, it may be that it's not their infant who you're probably seeing that has the issue, but it's really, you know, another child, an older child who's having the issues that's causing for the infant to have issues because of their own sleep issues. So at this point, we could take some more questions, and I don't know, Maria, where are we at with time?
We are actually at 2:45, but I've been watching. I haven't seen any other new questions come through. If you have a couple questions, now is the time. Otherwise, at the last slide on the PDF and on the last slide of this, the email addresses for the ladies that we're presenting today will be available, and you can email them directly. So I think I'll go ahead and let you do your last slide here, and then I'll wrap it up.
All right. So just 4 points, again, for key takeaways from here.
Yeah, sure. Just, you know, the importance of sleep for both children and adults, and as we mentioned earlier or over and over, that those impact each other. Baby sleeps better, mom sleeps better. Mom sleeps better, and she's feeling good, baby sleeps better. Consistency. Prevention and consistency are key. The importance of individualizing, that no one recipe works for all infants and toddlers, so setting up the environments to promote sleep is key, and then thinking finally of how to share the information that we've shared with you with families, so how to talk to families about consistency and about the importance of sleep and how much sleep a child needs, and giving choices at bedtime if that's the key, or at nap time, to help make things go a little more smoothly.
All right. So this is just, again, the time to send a reminder to yourself, either via text, an appointment, a task reminder about something that you would like to do or follow up with following this webinar. This is a good time to, you know, to do that, and remember to take advantage of all these resources that are available to you.